To create our cabin walls and make them much more realistic for our cabin, we're going to start out actually in Schoology, where I'm going to download an image of log cabin walls. I will have to click on it, and when I do, it gives me this repeating pattern of a log cabin wall. When I right click on it, I will hit Save Image As, go to the location where I save it, and save it as logs. I'll save it and it will download. We're now back over into Revit. As you can see in my 3D view, I have turned on the realistic view. To do that, again under Graphics and Displays, hit Edit. Make sure this says realistic, not just shaded. So you actually see, like mine has siding on it, yours might be brick, yours might be something else. We will be returning here after we set up our walls, so you can see that we have now turned this into something that looks like a log cabin, not just a small house in some neighborhood. When I look at the floor plan, I'm going to pick a wall. And because we want to actually build this with all the components, I'm going to change this to a generic 6-inch wall. You can see it gets smaller. And when I do that, I'm then going to go Edit Type, and I'm going to click Duplicate. Because I don't want to edit what generic 6-inch means, I want to create my own new wall structure. So I'm going to call this Log Cabin. That's the name of my wall type. And then I'm going to hit, the only thing I'm going to change here is the actual structure itself. So I'm going to click Edit to bring up this window. Right now you can see I have just generic structure. It's not actually made out of any material. That's 6 inches thick that makes up my wall. We're going to make this a much more realistically built wall using all the components that would be used to build the actual wall in our cabin. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to change this core structure to not be by category, but to be an actual material. When you click on this little box right here, it pulls up the material browser. The material browser has a search, which makes it very easy to find what you need. In our case, we're going to use softwood lumber, which I just start searching for lumber, and as I type it, it comes up. So I'm going to pick softwood lumber and hit OK as the material to be used in the structure of our core. It's also not going to be 6 inches thick. That would make our walls overall way too thick. It's going to be 3.5 inches thick. And when I type 3.25 and click Enter, it should put that in there. Now, whenever this is already a structural material, so I'll leave the actual function in there. Whenever I click Insert, it's going to put the new one above what I have selected. We'll use that to our advantage later. So this next one is not going to be a structural one. It's actually going to be a substrate. It's going to be plywood. The plywood that we screw to or attach to the outside of the framing. When I come into the material browser, PLY will be the plywood sheathing that we're going to attach to the outside of our walls. And click OK. It does not have a 0 thickness. In fact, if we go into the hardware store and at the front of the lumber aisles, you will see a bunch of this stuff stacked up, usually with a green painted or orange painted edge. That's the stuff that is commonly used, and it is 7/16 of an inch thick. I type 7/16, the inches sign, and hit Enter, and it will put it in there. I'm also going to label this. I'm not going to change that checkbox because it takes it away from the actual studs, which are the thing that are holding the wall up. One of the other things I'll point out is you'll notice my total thickness has now increased to just under 4 inches thick. This will continue to go up as I add the various layers. Now, I'm going to work my way on the inside, then the outside. So I'm going to click down as low as I can, click Insert. It's still going to put my new one above it. I'm going to click down, and then I'm going to click down again because I am no longer working in the core. I want to start working on the finished inside layers. The first thing we're going to add to our finished inside layer is a membrane layer. If I come in to my material browser and start to type membrane, MEM should pull up the first one, air infiltration barrier. Or I'm sorry, we're on the inside. We want to use the vapor retarder. My mistake. This is usually a clear plastic. If you see sometimes in a basement or in an unfinished room on the exterior walls, there'll be a clear plastic material. And we're going to go ahead and insert this. And basically that's used because as we exhale, we put moisture into the air. As you cook, as you take a shower, as you do various other things, you put moisture out into the air. We don't want that moisture penetrating into this layer and starting to grow mold. So that is why we put that barrier there. We're going to leave it at 0 thickness because as far as our wall's concerned, it basically is 0 thickness. It's a very thin layer. We're going to then click Insert again, move that down, and the very innermost layer that we're going to see is actually a finish layer, finish 1, and it is gypsum wallboard. GY should pull up exactly what you need. Another name for this is drywall. This is the actual board that goes up and then will get painted. I'm going to go ahead and click OK, and that should finish my interior stuff. I'm now going to click on the substrate or the plywood and click Insert and move that up a layer because, again, I'm no longer working in the core. I want to work on the outside finish. The first thing I'm going to add is a membrane layer that this time, when I search membrane, I am going to pick the air infiltration barrier. This is also sometimes called Tyvek or house wrap. If you've seen a house being built and then it's wrapped in this white plastic material, this is what we're talking about. It helps prevent air from moving into the house other than through vents and other things. We're going to also leave this at a 0 thickness. I'm sorry, I need to go back and change one thing. Our gypsum wallboard is not 0 thickness. This I do need to go and change to 1/2 inch. My mistake. If you don't put the inches after typing 1/2, it'll think you're trying to do a math problem. So make sure you do add your units there. Then you can press Enter and make sure it's a 1/2 inch thick. Sorry, back to the top. To fix our membrane layer, or to add after our membrane layer, that's where we're going to attach our logs. So I'm going to click Insert to create a finish layer. I'm going to use Finish 2 on the outside. We're going to make our logs 3 inches thick. So it's a 3-inch thick log cladding, which doesn't mean it's made of full logs, but it will look like a log cabin on the outside. When we go to the material, if I try to search for logs right now, I'm not going to find them. We actually have to make this layer. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to find pine, which already has a lot of the properties of logs, except this is a finished pine, more what you would see on furniture. So what we're going to do is we're going to duplicate it so that I now have pine 1. As I go into pine 1, I'm going to change this one to be log cabin just to make finding it easy. After you make sure that you're in log cabin, click over to, I want to go to identity. That's what it is. I want to go to appearance. As I come over here to appearance, there's a couple of things I'm going to adjust. First off, I'm not going to stain it. I don't want to darken my logs because the logs already look the way I want them to look. Next to the image, which is the image that it uses for pine, is a little drop down. And I am going to drop this down and click Edit Image down at the bottom. Currently, my source is this Woods and Plastics Finished Carpentry, and if I drag this out, you'll see the rest of the name that has it be the pine image. I'm going to click that. I'm then going to go wherever it was that I saved my log picture. For me, it was in my network drive, in my architecture folder, and I'm going to call it and pick logs and hit open. Now, when this comes in, it's going to assume that all 5 of these logs, or these 4 logs, exist within a 10-inch span. These logs are more like 12 inches tall apiece. So I'm going to change that by coming down to where it says scale and changing this to be 4 feet tall. That should adjust both of them, and I will click Done, and I will click OK, and I will click OK again. That should change it to my type. Now all that's left to do is pick all of the different ones, change them to my log cabin walls, and as you can see it from your 3D view, it will now look like a log cabin.